Pressure is mounting in Westminster as Chancellor Rachel Reeves faces the threat of a budget rebellion from her own Labour MPs. Reeves is preparing to deliver her second budget on November 26th, with a $50 billion black hole looming over the public finances. Tax rises for millions are now widely expected, but one of the biggest flashpoints is welfare. Earlier this year, Labour rebels forced the Prime Minister into a humiliating retreat over plans to cut $5 billion from the benefits bill.
This is crazy, man. This is outrageous, man. This bill isn't fit for purpose. If you have a look, it's 16 pages. I can ask a right honourable gentleman to rip the ones out now that's changed. There would only be 2 pages left. Withdraw the bill.
Reeves now wants to revive elements of those reforms, and the backlash is already brewing. To keep Labour's left on side, she's agreed to scrap the 2-child benefit cap, costing taxpayers around $3 billion. She had pushed for a taper system to reduce payments for larger families, but came under pressure from Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson, as well as scrutiny from Labour backbench MPs. Working age benefits, including universal credit, PIP and child benefit, are also expected to rise by 3.8% from April. But Reeves is signalling more changes are coming. She says the current system punishes people and traps them on benefits instead of supporting them into work. Labour sources say she needs to show the country she's serious about controlling welfare costs, even if it angers sections of her own party. Downing Street is backing her stance, insisting the welfare system is not fair or sustainable, and promising reforms focused on getting more people into work. But the Conservatives are piling on the pressure too. Tory leader Kemi Badenoch told business leaders that if Reeves wants real growth, she should scrap Labour's employment rights bill, branding it a political vanity project that delivers no jobs, no revenue, and no productivity gains. Labour has hit back, accusing the Conservatives of crashing the economy and insisting their own plans will boost investment, productivity, and growth. Meanwhile, wider budget fears are escalating. Speculation is growing over potential changes to cash ISAs, sparking alarm among savers already battling high inflation and squeezed incomes. And concerns remain over possible income tax adjustments, including threshold freezes that could quietly drag millions into higher tax bands. With a massive fiscal gap, internal Labour tensions, and public anxiety over welfare and taxes, Reeves heads into a budget week that could reshape both her authority and the government's entire economic strategy.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
Well, the Chancellor is going to cut... what was the point of having a budget? We know so much already. She's going to cut the tax-free ISA limit from $20,000 to $12,000 tomorrow.
Well, this comes as Rachel Reeves is dropping plans for a Brit ISA, which would have focused on UK investments.
We're going to speak to the economics editor of The Spectator, Michael Simmons. Michael, morning to you. Before we talk about the ISA and cutting the limit, which will impact I think, up to 14 million people. Have you ever known a more chaotic, shambolic build-up to a budget in your lifetime?
Certainly not in my lifetime. And I've been looking back at some budget history over the last sort of 150 years. And the only comparable one is Hugh Dalton, who accidentally leaked some of the budget to the Daily Star and then had to resign over it. And I think this Chancellor has leaked a lot more than he did.
Yeah, and it only made the stop press of the Daily Star, and he told the Daily Star as he was literally wandering into the chamber to make the speech, so he didn't think there was any prospect it was ever going to be reported anywhere. So he was an accidental leaker, as opposed to Rachel Reeves, who's been leaking en masse.
Yeah, it's awful. I'm totally sick of it. I just want tomorrow to be over because, as you say, we basically think we know everything now. And OK, that's one thing, what it's done to sort of the media coverage. But this has had a real effect in the markets. I mean, if you look at the London housing market, that's basically just ground to a complete halt from the very slow pace it was moving at anyway, because people are just thinking, so much is being talked about. There's so much uncertainty. We hear about one tax rise on Monday, and then on Tuesday, it's actually the other things happening. So investors, people selling houses just don't want to make decisions. And I think it's fair to say that this will have had a real, impact on our GDP over the last 12 weeks, because she's just ground the economy to a halt, because people understandably have just had all this uncertainty, and people don't like making investment decisions in uncertain times.
And even retailers have been quoted today as saying that it's ruined their Black Friday sales, because people often buy big ticket items on Black Friday that they wouldn't normally buy the rest of the year, beds, kitchens, things like that. But of course they haven't, because they're worried about what's coming next. So do you think we'll see actually a downturn in retail sales as well as the housing market, jobs market, etc.?
Yeah, I think potentially. And I think the Treasury's comm strategy on this has totally backfired, because they rolled the pitch on this idea of increasing the basic rate of income tax, and then they pulled that back, thinking that would be good news, because when they do, fiscal drag, when they freeze the thresholds, they had internal polling that suggested that most voters don't realise that that's a tax increase until it's too late and they see it on their payslip. They thought they would get away with that. But what they've done instead is created so much noise that I think they've actually provided some service to financial education, because I think everyone now understands that increase the rates or not, whatever they do on the thresholds is a tax hike. And I think they didn't want, people to be aware of that. But by creating so much noise, we all know that now.
And talk to us about ISAs. These were invented by Gordon Brown's, I think Gordon Brown was Chancellor when they came in. So a lot of people, 14 million people, I think, have a cash ISA. They can invest £20,000 a year and they pay no interest. You don't have to pay any interest on any tax on the interest. Now, she's going to cut that, slash that almost by half. Why would you penalise people who are trying to save and put, as my mum would say, put money away for a rainy day?
Well, she's boxed herself into a corner. I mean, she spoke about this at her Mansion House speech a few months ago. And ostensibly, she made a case, which I don't disagree with, which is this country, unlike America, doesn't invest enough. We all just put our money, in cash savings where they're not in the stock market. And that's partly why people are not as wealthy as they are in other countries. And that would be a reasonable argument. But I think that's not why she's doing this now. It's because they're not going for this broad increase in taxes. She's forced to, look for something here, look for something else over there in these little, niche areas. And the result of that is that the effect is felt much more, stronger for people that do have cash ISAs or people whose pension pots might be raided or whatever. And the effect of that, is that it just will slow down the economy. It's going to slow down spending and things. So I think it's just a symptom of this kind of smorgasbord budget that she's going for.
And the reason she has been boxed into the corner, the reason that she is going to have to raise taxes, whichever way she decides to do that, is because she won't, or rather can't, cut the constant increase in spending that we're now seeing. We've had reports today, 5 million people now are on benefits with no requirement to work. Everybody knows this is unsustainable. Every economist knows this is unsustainable. What's going to happen if she refuses to tackle the growing benefits and welfare bill?
Well, this is where I think we get into the risk of a market freakout. Because the Treasury seem to think that, it's all about handling the comms, balancing the books, getting the headroom right, and then our borrowing costs will somehow come down. But if you look at the longer term borrowing costs that are, staying way higher than any other advanced economy, it's because, as you say, the markets are so concerned about our soaring spending. But more than that, they're freaked out by Labour's lack of political ability to get any cuts through. That's why the yields soared earlier in the year, was because they saw the U-turn on winter fuel. They saw the U-turn on what was only a £5 billion cut to an £100 billion disability welfare budget. And they think it doesn't matter who the Chancellor is. It doesn't matter if the Chancellor says she's cares about fiscal responsibility. If she's got no chance of using a massive majority to get it through, because the Labour backbenchers now seem to completely control the government, then there's no chance of the fiscal restraint that we need. And I think there's a real risk that if markets don't see that change sometime soon, then we could see yields going even higher.
If you were Chancellor tomorrow, Michael, what is the one thing you would announce that you're pretty sure Rachel Reeves isn't going to do?
She's definitely not going to do this, but she definitely should abolish stamp duty. It's the stupidest tax we have. It was meant to be a wealth tax, and now almost loads of people in the housing market pay it. It completely bungs up mobility in this country. It bungs up the labour market. I would scrap that right now.
And there's been a resurgence in this idea of the Laffer curve, as in the more money the government takes off you, the higher the taxes are, eventually the government's income will fall. Do you think Rachel Reeves is listening to that kind of explanation?
Well, no, she seems to be completely ignoring it. But I think we're pretty far up the curve. We see this all the time in the data about first the non-doms leaving, and then just the millionaires leaving. And I think we are going to get to a point where middle earners are actually squeezed to the point where middle earners start looking at leaving too. And this is the fundamental question that not just the government, by the way, we as voters have to grapple with. If we want to keep electing governments that are content with having a state as large as it is, then I'm sorry, taxes have to go up across the board on everyone. Because if you look at the lower earners in this country, their tax burden is actually relatively low compared to, say, Scandinavian countries. It's the high earners that are paying the bulk of the tax. So if we want to continue being a high spending country, then something's got to change there. But that's not what I would do. I'd rather see us shrinking the state of it.
Well, Michael Simmons, thank you very much.
Pity you're not making the speech tomorrow, Michael, I can tell you. And that would be the same from most GB News viewers and listeners, I think.